A system worked, a rule was enforced, but it leaves us with a critical, more complicated question, one that cuts right to the heart of corporate power and priority. It's the sound of unchecked power, a voice that can change everything in an instant. Again and again, we've seen it. When unchecked power meets fragile rules, chaos follows. Billion-dollar frauds, systemic scandals, and shattered trust.
But there is a defense, an architecture of accountability designed to stop the chaos. This is the rulebook.
But does this rulebook have real teeth? Can it truly stand up to the most powerful person in the company?
But there is a system meant to stop this. Corporate governance. The rulebook designed to keep even the most powerful in check. But does it really work when it matters most?
All right, let's talk about the invisible systems that control the world's most powerful companies. We're going to look at the raw, personal power of the executive voice and the official rulebook that's supposed to keep it all in check.
Listen to this. That's the voice of a CEO. The sound of unchecked power delivered over a Zoom call back in December 2021. And yeah, it went viral for just how brutal it was.
And what was the result of that voice? This number. 900 people lost their jobs in an instant. It was a stark reminder of the human cost of a decision made at the very top.
But here is the thing. That now infamous Zoom call, it wasn't the whole story. Not even close. It was really just the tip of the iceberg. The one moment that finally got everyone's attention.
So once people started digging, a whole picture began to emerge. A pattern of alleged toxic leadership and financial misconduct. The very voice that was supposed to be leading the company to a massive IPO was, well, kind of derailing the whole thing.
And this is not a one-off story. When the voice of the ruler isn't checked by the rules, the results can be, and often are, catastrophic. It's a theme we've seen play out again and again in business.
And it comes in all different flavors, but the pattern is so familiar, right? It could be financial fraud, just making numbers up. It could be engineering deceit that pollutes our planet, or it could be a corrupt culture that pushes good employees to do bad things.
I mean, just look at FTX. It was sold to us as the future of finance, but it turned out to be a complete house of cards, leaving an $8 billion hole where customer money was supposed to be.
Or how about Volkswagen, a global giant famous for its engineering who deliberately built fraud right into their engines to fool regulators? That scandal cost them over $30 billion and just shattered public trust. And of course, Wells Fargo. Their relentless sales culture, pushed from the very top, just metastasized into systemic fraud. We're talking millions of fake accounts and billions in fines.
So, with all that chaos, what's the defense? Well, there is a formal system in place. It's an architecture of accountability designed specifically to stop these meltdowns. It's called corporate governance. Let's take a look under the hood of a giant, like Nestle, for example. When you see their board structure, you can see this architecture in action. It's not just one group of people. It's this complex web of committees, each one with a specific job overseeing a critical part of the business. Simply put, this is the rulebook. It's the institutional voice that's designed to be a check on the personal voice of the CEO. It's there to make sure that the company is controlled by a shared set of principles, not just one person's whims. And these committees are the engine rooms of that whole system. You can think of them like internal police forces. You've got the audit committee watching the money, the nomination committee picking the leaders, and the sustainability committee looking at the company's impact on the world.
Okay, so we see the structure. But you gotta ask, right? Does this rulebook actually have teeth? Can it really stand up to the most powerful person in the entire company? Let's look at a pretty high-stakes test case and see what happens.
In September 2025, just a year after his appointment, Nestle CEO Laurent Freixe was suddenly fired. Now, for a company known for being pretty stable and conservative, this was a huge deal.
So what happened? Did profits tank? Was there some big strategic fight? Nope. The answer was actually much more fundamental. It had nothing to do with performance. It was about the rules. And it all came down to this one line, right here, in Nestle's own code of conduct. An internal investigation found he had an undisclosed romantic relationship with someone who reported directly to him. A clear, black and white violation of their rules. And that is the absolute key. In this moment, the institutional voice of the rulebook was louder. It was more powerful than the personal voice of the CEO. The system, that architecture of accountability, it worked exactly the way it was supposed to. So the system worked. Accountability was enforced. Case closed, right? Well, not exactly. Because this whole episode raises an even bigger, more complicated question about what accountability really means.
And this is where you see the real tension. On one side, you have the company enforcing its internal rules with absolute precision. But on the other, it faces years and years of public criticism for these huge ethical issues like child labor and water rights that don't seem to get the same urgent response.
You know, this comment I saw on a forum just hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures that feeling. It's a question that cuts right to the heart of corporate priorities. Why is one rule a firing offense, while others, with maybe a much bigger human impact, aren't?
And that really leaves us with the critical question, doesn't it? A system of governance can be a powerful check on a leader, for sure. But that rulebook is only as good, only as moral, as the people who write it. In the end, the real measure of a company isn't just if it enforces its rules, but which rules it chooses to enforce with all its might.
A system worked, a rule was enforced, but it leaves us with a critical, more complicated question, one that cuts right to the heart of corporate power and priority.
Because the real question isn't whether the rules exist, it's which rules matter most.